I'll just start with a little bit of housekeeping. Um, for everybody who's on the call, please rename your Zoom name. So keep your name so that we can say hello to you. But just in front of your name, if you can put your team number. So I see some of you have done this already. That's great. We need you to do this so that when we do some breakouts, we can put team members together. Yeah, that's cool. And also, please mute your audio so that we don't get any background noises. And apart from that, it looks like we've got a good number who've turned up, not too many. So there's 2 people per team, kind of max, because it starts to get a bit crazy if we have more than about 30 in our Zoom session. And we'll call breaks as we go. So there will be breaks throughout the program. There just aren't any breaks on the program at the moment. All right. Okay. So this is today's program, and I'm going to be the MC, and I'll introduce some important people behind Pitch to Policy. And you'll also meet the current Pitch to Policy team who are facilitating this bootcamp, including myself. And after that, we're going to go straight into the change, which is one of the slides in the final pitch. So I'm going to start off by handing you to my boss, Associate Professor Peter Graham, and I'll just introduce him by saying that Peter is the Executive Director of Global Buildings Performance Network, and he has more than 15 years experience in international advocacy and research and education in sustainable building design, construction, evaluation, and of course, policy. He has been the technical advisor and was coordinator of the United Nations Environment Programme, the UNEP, Sustainable Buildings and Climate Initiative. And while he was the coordinator, he developed and managed many of UNEP's key research projects and publications in the building sector. So Peter, if you want to take the stage, that'd be great.
Thanks, Craig, and hello, everybody. I'd like to thank the Pitch to Policy team, Craig, PS Collective, Monash University for really getting behind this important effort. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the GBPN2, just in case you don't know. Before I do begin, just to say congratulations to the teams who've made it this far. It is an initiative which is difficult to really get this far in, because we're looking for ideas that are really going to influence policy in decarbonising housing. Now, the Global Buildings Performance Network was formed in France in 2011, and we are an NGO, which is a global network of local experts in building energy policy. And we've been working over the last decade now, nearly, to help governments and industry to identify, adopt and implement best practices in building energy performance policies, with the aim of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and particularly to achieve the mitigation potential of the building sector, which, as you all know, is significant, and it is absolutely essential that we see decarbonisation in the building sector if we have any chance of meeting the goal of keeping global warming to 1.5 degrees or less. So GBPN operates globally. We have an initiative called the Policy Strategy for Decarbonising Buildings, which is operating in Southeast Asia and India. And we have some great partners in India who are helping initiate that, AEEE and CEPT University and others. So it's a very important work that we see in India already going on, regulating or trying to regulate energy demand from residential buildings. And the initiative of the ENS to see that energy efficiency standards can be applied to residential buildings is absolutely essential, given that that sector of the construction industry is leading the increasing demand for energy and related greenhouse gas emissions. The GBPN program is really focusing in India on how we can help to implement the ENS in various jurisdictions. And we know from our decades of work in the building sector that despite our best efforts, we are actually improving the energy intensity or reducing the energy intensity of buildings in general. We're not seeing that shift to decarbonisation. In fact, last year, 2019, the building sector produced more greenhouse gas emissions than it ever has before, more than 10 gigatons. And so while we're really pushing hard and we're seeing great policy initiatives like those that are occurring in India, we're not seeing the mass market shift that we need. We're not seeing the decarbonisation occur. And those of us who've been around for a long time have to be humble and realise that, you know, perhaps some of the ideas that we have of how we can achieve this important goal may need to be refreshed. And so this is really where pitch to policy comes in, and the work of trying to identify the new ideas, better ideas, more transformative ideas for being able to see that real traction of policy being implemented and energy demand and emissions going down in residential buildings. So this is a very important initiative for us, GBPN, because it gives us a chance to meet new policy influencers, new thinkers, new entrepreneurs, people who have got ideas that maybe need a little bit more attention from policymakers in general. This pitch to policy in India is our second pitch to policy pilot. We started in Indonesia last year, and that was a fairly open program trying to identify general ideas for being able to reduce emissions from residential buildings in warm climates. This competition in India is focused much more on the policy challenge of how we can see a business case for implementing the ENS in affordable housing and in housing in general. And we're really looking forward to hearing much more about the ideas that you've got and looking to take these ideas further. The competition, pitch to policy, doesn't end when the winners are announced. The GBPN as a global network is set up to be able to foster further engagement with the ideas that are coming to the top in these competitions and develop an alumni of pitch to policy winners that we can help support by providing opportunities for further dissemination of the ideas and further development of the ideas, and potentially incorporating these ideas into our funding programs going forward. So this is a start, certainly, but definitely not the end of the journey for you all, and certainly looking forward to seeing how the competition goes. I'm hoping to come back and see who's won at the end. Right, so I might hand it back to you now, Craig.
All right, thank you very much for that. I'd also like to just get a brief introduction from Dr. Sarkhet Saraf. Sarkhet has worked with me for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks to put pitch to policy together in India. So super grateful to him. And so I'd just like to introduce him and get a few comments from him. Dr. Saraf has over 20 years of experience in sustainable development in India and has worked in the United States. He is the founder and the principal at PS Collective, which is a platform for advocacy, research, policy analysis, and it is also a consultancy. And his current work focuses on policy research and decision support for energy, efficiency, and of course, sustainable development. So Sarkhet, if you want to warm us up, that would be good.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig, for the introduction. And thanks to all the participants for taking time off from their very busy schedule and being here with us the application and over next couple of days in the boot camp. I joined Peter, GBPN team, who has worked tirelessly, Jeswin, Dennis, Maya, Kate, Craig, Gautam, and others, and the PS Collective team, Maz and Krupa, to congratulate all of you to kind of reach the next milestone. And I'm hoping that this is just a beginning of a very long and fruitful journey, something that Peter also said, this competition is not the end, it's a kind of a means towards or a door into a long journey ahead. We did receive excellent set of pitches from many teams, and apologies that we gave you short time to respond due to many other things happening around. But it's a testimony also of the fact that there's a wide variety of ideas out there with people like you who have been on the ground in industry, in research, in academia, beyond the so-called policy, the mainstream policy circles. And I think this is what Pitch2 policy is unique in its approach to say, well, the depth and the breadth of knowledge which is there with professionals and researchers, how do we bring some of that to influence the policy? Because that makes the policy much more closer to reality and much more implementable. It's not something then that is forced from top, but it is something that is co-developed in some sense. And that is, I think, one of the aims of this P2P. And I'm told that this is just the beginning of the P2P journey also. And hopefully, if this goes well, we may have many more such events going ahead. And I'm sure that next couple of days with Craig and Hans would be amazing. I'm myself looking forward to all the deliberations. And I'm sure by the end of 5 days at Bootcamp, you would yourself find a huge jump in the way you are thinking about your idea and the way you would pitch them to policymakers and join the bandwagon of policy influence. So make best use of the next couple of days, and welcome upfront to being part of the GBPN network and continue to make a difference as you go ahead. So I'll close there, and I'll wish each of you to make best use of this time and contribute to low carbon development in India. Thank you. And thanks to Peter and GBPN team once again for giving PS Collective the opportunity to be part of this journey.
Super. Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Saket. I'll briefly introduce the rest of us. I'm Craig, and Angela Rojas is going to join us tomorrow. She's a transition expert who's pursuing postgraduate research on transitions and change. She was a student of Vela de Haan from the Dutch School of Transitions. And Hans Westerhoff is another person from Holland. But he is a pitch development expert, and he works often with the the large European funded program called KIC. And he works independently as a motivator for startup ventures, high-tech developments, and entrepreneurs. Me, who's been doing a bit of talking, I'm a domain expert in renewable energy, and as you know, I work at GBPN. I developed Pitch2 Policy from the KIC program, from the KIC European program. So that's where it came from. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a bright blue shirt like this with crazy green stripes, I did this on purpose. I bought this shirt in Pune. I was a guest of the Indian government a few years ago to talk about computer security, and I got this fantastic shirt. So there you go. And we'll have a couple of other guests next weekend, including Professor Vishal Garg and Associate Professor Raj Kiran Bilolika. So I'd like to kick over and get started right away. It's good we're running a bit early. We've also had a good number of people attend. We have 27. And I'm going to give you to Hans to just kick off this initial activity, which is really just a get to know you activity. You've heard from me and you've heard from the GBPN and PS Collective team, but to us, it's just 27 faces in Zoom. So you should also get to know each other. We will organize a quick breakout. This will also allow anyone else who's running a bit late to come, but we will put you into groups of 4 people. And so please take turns to each introduce yourself and ask a few questions. We know that your teams are doing things that are very different, but also some teams are doing some similar stuff. You may work with these people, right? It's not a competition in the greater world. If you are trying to save the world, we are not going to compete with each other to save the world. So give each person in your group 4 to 5 minutes, and then switch, and then come back and we'll jump straight into the deck. Hans, are you okay? Oops. Are you okay to start the breakout? Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So, any questions so far? And in the breakout room? Let me see. No questions so far. Then I will create the breakout rooms. And you're being randomly put together. Yeah. Okay. Well, and I will put 15 minutes.
Okay.
You're now being invited to a breakout room. So this was just, you know, to get to know a few people here in this group. We're going to be working for a few weekends together, and now you know a few of the faces that we currently see, and maybe, and I hope that was good. We will do introductions of all of you over time. And so we have 15 teams. We won't do 15 introductions right now, because it takes the energy a little bit out of the session. And we will spread it out during the modules today and tomorrow. And we'll make sure that by the end of tomorrow, every team has had an opportunity to introduce the initiative. But for now, I'll just ask a few. So leave AC, team 27. Can you say a little bit about yourself and your initiative?
Yes, hello everybody. We are team Leaf AC. My name is Pratiksha and my partner is architect Swapnil. We both are architects by profession, and also we have done our masters in sustainable architecture. We are experienced in the green building certification domain, like LEED, IGBC and GRIHA, and building simulations and energy simulations. So we are happy to be at the Pitch to Policy competition, and we are happy that we are selected for the next round. So our idea in this Pitch to Policy was about green finance, and what could green finance do to make affordable housing and also low carbon development housing more mainstream in India, and how can people demand more of energy efficient houses, and also how can it address affordability in India as well. So this is our basic idea, which we had pitched in the initial level, and we look forward to taking it ahead from here with the help from the mentors and from the resources provided by Pitch to Policy.
Thank you, Pratiksha. So this is obviously very important. But you will see, and a few questions that I have and that Craig has. So and that will also be the guideline a little bit during this bootcamp. How would you start this initiative? What would you envision that you would do to get this started? Do you have an idea already on what the first step would be?
Basically, we don't have a clear picture of it. We have just a vague idea for the beginning.
Yeah,
We would actually look at products which are there abroad, which are already existing in the market for financing green projects or for the home buyers. But we are not really sure how it would work in India, and what would be our next step. But we have an idea, like how these things should be implemented and what would be the complexities while implementing this idea. Like, I mean, we'd have to, convince the banks or
sure. Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's totally fine. I mean, these are we hope in this training that we can give you starting points to
Yeah.
work on your idea specifically. And I think during the training, we will address these topics. But for now, thank you very much. That's great.
Yeah.
I have somebody else, a volunteer, maybe. We have volunteers. Otherwise, we have to point out volunteers. You know?
Hi,
So,
this is Darini from Team 15.
okay, Dagini. Yeah.
Hi. So we are a team of 2 people. One is Abdul Moeed, who is also there with us today, and I am the second person. So I'm an architect and Abdul is an engineer. And we are actually, we have pitched something on the education side for pitch to policy. And in short words, I can say that we are planning to pitch in standards and codes like the residential standard and carbon sequestration, and how to bring about this and inculcate this in the education side, because that's where people actually graduate, learn, get awareness, and then come out. So that's the short summary of what we are planning to do. But nevertheless, we're not very sure of the path ahead. We are just trying to brainstorm whom to contact and where to begin with. So we were sort of looking forward to today's session to get a starting point.
Great.
Yep. That's
You have a
cool.
question? Yeah, cool. No. So basically, if I understand you correctly, it's about, you know, integrating or maybe building your own educational program, or integrating into curricula.
Yep.
Yeah, integrating into an existing curriculum. Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah.
So so we thought to discuss with the first preference will be talk to the government, and second preference will be the talk to private university which are like ready to uh, run such program or something prior to these things incorporate our suggestion.
Okay. Thanks, Abdul.
Thank you.
Let's do one more team. Volunteer. Yeah. Surabi.
Hi, a good afternoon to all of you. I'm Surabhi Joshi. My team's name is Equitable Weatherization Access. Now, I'm an economist by profession, so I think I'm really delighted to be in this August gathering of predominantly architects, is what I get, what I'm getting.
So far.
So the concept here is that access to cooling or heating services, like it gets really it gets costly when you need the most. So if you see the tariff design which exists in India during the peak summers when you need the cooling services the most, the tariff is also the highest. So are there mechanisms that we can create to hedge this increase in tariff? So we have come up with this idea of creating thermal comfort cards, which would be an integrated approach, wherein we would be designing a card like a credit card. And I have my colleague who is into finance business and has an extensive experience in doing this type of work for about last 18 years, who's not here now, Dr. Shashank Agrawal, and we thought of doing something together so that the flexibility part of, like, you know, the tariff becomes accessible to people when they need the most. And then this initiative can then again be integrated for example, for low income households, for how can you also provide capital benefits, because there you need equipments along with tariff being low when the heat is very high. So it's like, how do we provide equitable access for energy? And I think the building aspect is inclusive of it. So there are various building envelope initiatives which can be taken in within this program. We want to do it at local level. In order to stack in the benefits, which you can go from various other programs which are happening, for example, smart energy, smart cities program, which is there in various different constituencies in India coming up. Then you have Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So all of them have various initiatives which are already in place to increase efficiency of buildings, but there have to be mechanisms by which you can integrate these systems and bring it together. Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's in fact the opposite of search pricing. You want to search pricing, peak pricing that you see in, for example, in Uber, and you're trying to.
Yeah, but more from the hedging perspective, not making the end consumer, you know, have access to the high prices. Like so we are just going to bring the cost down only, not up, because in various different markets we have seen that bringing the price of electricity high then creates issues by low income households not being able to come into the program. So yeah.
Thank you very much. So for now, thanks for 3 introductions. We'll do 3 more later on, but first I will hand over back to Craig to kick off the first module.
Okay, I'm just resharing this. All right. Okay, everybody. What you see in front of you now, or I hope you see this in front of you, is the pitch to policy deck. So it's just 8 slides, and you deliver them in just 5 minutes. And you're probably thinking, how can you spend 20 hours in a boot camp and just produce one 8-slide deck? Okay. And the short answer is that there's a lot more than the deck. There's the story. And it turns out to be actually very difficult to get your entire story down to only 8 slides and a couple hundred words. And we ran this in Indonesia, and the biggest challenge was telling people to chuck stuff out, throw stuff out. So today, we're actually going to start with slide number 5 at the bottom left. We used to do this one later. We now do this one first because it turns out to be the most important. What is the change that you have in mind? And there's really a number of aspects to this. What are you going to change, and who are you going to try and reach? And how will you interact with the people that you need? All right, so my presentation for the next little while is slides with bullet points, and it's certainly more than 8 slides and certainly more complicated than a few hundred words. But I'll go slowly and carefully, and we'll have a couple more breakouts and a couple of breaks as we go. All right, this is the summary. So this is what I'll be talking to you about. The story is basically that people are stuck and they don't like change. Unfortunately, they don't like change even when it is in their interest. So that applies to the government, that applies to the industry, and it also applies to you and me, okay? But there are changes we can make, very many different kinds. Some are easier, some are noisier, expensive, and it's a case of finding how many changes we can make and picking the ones that we can execute. I'm then going to talk about why it is so hard to reach the government. I'll talk about why the government doesn't do things that you expect it to do. I'll look briefly at the theory of change and what kind of changes have worked before, and I've got a whole lot of examples to share with you. And then what will actually happen is some actual change slides. So change slides from previous pitch to policies plus 1 from our manual. So you guys have all got the bootcamp manual. And then you'll actually make your first slide live. You'll actually make it. All right. What you're seeing now is some zombies. They are the unsustainable undead. And each of them is calling out for some kind of high energy, high cost trophy purchase. Okay, this is a particular problem here where I live, but it seems like people just want these things and we can't stop them. And the reason this is the case is called a path dependency. And it means that people want what they want and they just can't see alternatives, and they can't let go of wanting the things that they want. So they seem like zombies, right? They are unthinking and unstoppable. But just like them, I also stick to my routines and I also want my comforts, okay? So change is hard to bring about because it really means human behavior change, right? That's what we're really talking about here, changing people's behaviors. And they resist this because it's natural to resist change, and they insist on their rights. So you have just recently seen, particularly in the United States, people not wearing a COVID mask because they felt that it was their right. And it's their right not to vote, okay? But in Pitch to Policy, we follow the advice of Buckminster Fuller, who was a famous architect, and he said this: you can't improve what is already in place. Instead, you have to make something new that makes today's world obsolete. So, Eko Niwas Samhita is the new world. It's a fantastic first step. And what we need to do in our pitches is we need to show that the fossil fuel driven building development is obsolete. It's a zombie. That's what we need to show. And another great example is cars. This joke picture shows a couple, the unsustainable undead, and they are going to buy a second car no matter what. You can't stop them. This is quite a lot worse in Australia. For example, there is a movement at the moment where everybody wants an outdoor air conditioner, right? Can you believe that? And finally, it is very, very hard to see new ways or other ways when you have social practices that are deeply embedded. If you drive, and you drive all the time, the concept of riding a bicycle seems extremely difficult, dirty, wet, and dangerous. You just can't see the alternative. And this cartoon shows that quite superbly and simply, and anyone can understand this picture. The car runs on money and it makes you fat. The bicycle burns the fat off your body and it saves you money. And you can say to people, you know what? Driving is the largest use of home final energy. So you look at all the things in your house that consume energy. It turns out that if you have a car and you use it a lot, it is the #1 energy consumer. You can also tell people that cars, especially new cars, are one of the worst financial investments that there are. You cannot throw your money away more quickly than if you buy a new car and then sell it. And finally, if you try to convince people on health, you could say that car occupants actually inhale more pollution than cyclists do, than pedestrians do, and all other road users. The people in the car are getting the pollution. And these are great facts. These are really good facts. But the actual way to bring about change is to demonstrate a better way. And furthermore, you need to be able to demonstrate this tomorrow morning with help. You need to demonstrate a better way and make the current way look obsolete. And there are many, many things that you could potentially do. Now, this is a very simple matrix. On the vertical axis, it's the impact of change, the people we reach, and along the bottom, it's the probability, so the likelihood of change being successful. And because there are these stuck people and stuck practices, and because we don't have a lot of time or resources, we should look for change that can be introduced in a rapid manner. And this may require impact in order to reach its targets, okay? So unsurprisingly, the top right corner of this matrix is where we want to make impact and bring about change. For example, Elon Musk relies on impact for his program for EVs. Even though he can well afford other forms of promotion, he goes for high impact. So as an example of something that has high impact but a low chance of change, a social media campaign, TV advertisements, a huge webinar, These things can make a splash, but they may not lead to anything. The same goes for a large study or a new report. These things are important. Studies and reports are critically important, but they take an awfully long time and too many of them do not get read. Now, further along here, we call this the long game. If we have the resources and we are mature and established, we can invest in a long-term investment or a complex program. Okay, this is the long game. But pitch to policy is about getting started. That's its goal. And here I introduce the word disruption. And I suggest that one way to get change to happen is to disrupt a practice within a company or within the government. And what I want to say to you here and reassure you is that we are not about causing conflict. Disruption is not about making people mad. It is really about demonstrating that things can be done better, and then we take other people along with us. But it's still disruptive. It breaks these patterns, these stuck loops that people find themselves in. And if this is any help, this is another matrix where we have impact, but also ease. And it's not surprising that in pitch to policy, we want something that's not too hard, but that is going to reach its target, okay? And in this case, an example of something that's kind of not very easy, but high impact would be a public movement. So do you want to start your own public political party or a public movement to bring about change? This takes quite a lot of work. And I'll give you an example of this in a minute. But it is something that makes an impact. In contrast, raising money, it's hard. And when you raise the money, it in itself does not cause change at all. Again, the long game for GBPN is building codes. So GBPN works to get new building codes like the ENS put in, and we do education. These things take time. They are actually not too hard. New building codes is the best way. It's thought of as being the lowest cost way to bring about the largest change. The problem is of its impact is not high. So new codes are great, but enforcement is the thing that makes them work. And enforcement can start tomorrow at a small scale. Random visits to sites is something that is pretty easy, as just as an example. All right, so what we now need you to do is to turn to your project, and we need you in groups of 3 teams, so larger groups this time. We need you to look hard at the change that you want to make. So we had a couple of introductions before, and we've heard that people have got a well-formed idea of where they're going, but that they haven't really looked or thought about how to begin. And so this is the time to do this. It's also a time to take a short break if you need to, but you have 30 minutes in the breakout room, and you need to answer the question, how will you get started? Please also consider what might stop you. And you saw those two matrices that I put up before. We'd like it if you could think about those or draw those and consider that some of the ideas you have to get started might be harder, they might be lower impact, they may have a low chance of succeeding. So think about how to get started, and if you can think of a number of ideas, rank them. And then this will get you started on what might be the best initiation. Now, I've just had a request on chat to share this list. What I'll do is I will attempt to paste it into the chat, or how can I do that for a breakout, Hans? How do we share this in the breakout rooms?
Then you have to, this exercise, we have to, I can make a, if you give me a minute, I can make a screenshot and upload it in the chat. but you have to download it from the chat first before you join the breakout room. Yeah. So
I'll do that.
Can you make a screenshot? Oh, you did it. You just did, right?
Is it going to let me paste it? No, it's not. So I'll make it as a file.
Yeah, as a file on your desktop, then upload it in the chat. Then everybody has it.
Okay.
And in the meantime, so I have prepared breakout groups for 30 minutes, so 10 minutes per team. And again, yeah, you will meet a few new people. It's a chance to introduce yourself and your initiative, but also think indeed about, okay, if this is the big hairy goal that we have, how do we get it started? I hope that was a good opportunity to get to know each other a little bit more. And
Yes.
and the people who are in this room, we will try to mix you up today and tomorrow with new people again. So you know, we can't maybe talk all to all, but that you get to know as many people as you can during this training. And it's not just anonymous screens. So for now, it's maybe a good opportunity for other teams to introduce themselves using this discussion that you just had, and maybe some reflection on it. I'm looking at you, Sabu. You're mute still. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, my name is Abu Francis. I'm also an architect, and I wear a couple of hats. I'm also a software developer. I'm also a researcher in architecture. And my job is to clarify the way we represent our problems in such a manner, in such a clear manner, so that all the various facets which people are talking about can actually be placed inside that representation. So very superficially, somebody may say that, oh, this is another BIM software. It is not. It is BIM. I have serious objections to, because they talk about the final building mainly. And then we take a, what Abraham Maslow said, that if all you had was a hammer, then all problems look like a nail. And once upon a time, architects, all they had was computer-aided drafting software, and they thought they can do designing with that, and which is not the case. So you need to have the right tools. It's not just an issue of tool. It is an issue of how you talk about the entire architecture information modeling process. So one of my friends who's an architect and a poet, he expressed it pretty nicely. He said that if you were to look at an archer, with a bow and arrow, the audience is looking at the target. But what I am doing is trying to see whether the arrow can go all the way properly into the representation of what we are talking about, just so that it shoots and reaches the target. So the practicality of what I'm talking about is that unless and until we really represent all the various things which we need in our society, and there are tons of aspects, that needs to go in a coherent modeling format, and that's not really conventional BIM. So I've been working on it for the last 30 years. It's been vetted with various papers I've written. I've got 2 research projects with IIT Bombay. We worked out a new way of energy calculations. And my job is not really to be an expert in being in energy or this or that or anything. My job is, if you pardon my pompousness, I'm like the Panini of architecture, this thing. I'm building up the grammar, the language representation. And everything starts like that, right? If you don't represent the thing correctly, how are you going to further discuss anything about it? You will end up with bad data, and that will further lead to even more bad data. So it has become pretty practical now, and I'm not really rejecting the current way of working. So I'm not saying that you throw out your drafting software and then you adopt whatever I'm talking about. In fact, I'm talking about you do architectural information modeling, then bring in your regular computer-aided drafting software. So it really doesn't disrupt the way of working, and you still have a very responsible archive of knowledge. Today, architects are siloed. I do one building, the other architect doesn't know what has happened next.
This
I recently,
this reminds me a bit of the zombies in the car.
Right.
It's very, very difficult for the drivers to conceive of a different world if they are stuck in the car. And
right.
to them, the different world looks very bad and wrong and very difficult.
Right.
And
so that's why there's a lot of objection. Actually, if you really look at the ground story of what architects are facing, I feel the conventional software industry has lost their empathy. They're concentrating on some very esoteric projects and esoteric thing. And a lot of architects are very annoyed. They're doing crazy things like sending legal notices to architects and all, to make their money. And this is really upset a lot of people.
Sabo, for what you're trying to do you already have specific example projects in place, or?
Yeah, all my practice projects were done at this, and I had a very nice, kind of a different person right in the beginning. Unfortunately, he expired, and that practice changed direction after his expiry. Otherwise, that person was doing a lot of institutional projects, educational institutes and things like that. Whereas I'm doing really, residential projects and the run-of-the-mill kind of thing, and trying to do my level best. In the swamp, you need to rise the lotus.
Thanks, Sabo. Thanks for now. Thanks for your introduction. Let me move to somebody else. I see Aru, you have your camera turned on, so it's easy to call you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Hans. Thanks, Craig. We're extremely excited to be a part of GBPN. What do we do? Our platform called EcoCollab tries to address a gap in the sustainable building delivery ecosystem. So what we essentially started off with is to pull in solution providers, sustainability solution providers on this platform. We also conducted, before starting EcoCollab with my colleague Anamika, we also conducted a organic survey where a few things opened our eyes. People want to build sustainably. They don't have enough resources or reliable resources to go to build sustainably. And they find it very difficult to get a photovoltaic person, a water harvesting person, an eco-friendly architect, eco-friendly material specifications. These are the roadblocks that they were talking about. So we said, you know what, let's have everybody rock together on EcoCollab. So that's how that started. And for GBPN, we took this a step further and said that why don't we templatize few of these solutions as a toolkit for homeowners, a toolkit for RERA approved developers, and kind of be ready to roll out ECBC. We're really excited about this energy conservation building code that is going to be accepted by Karnataka, one of the 5 states in India. Yes. So we said, let's be ECBC ready, and let's see if we can get our toolkit to as many number of people as we can.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. You have just a quick question. So you have the toolkit available, or your plan is to develop it?
That's what it's a strategic idea right now. We need help to develop that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Let's do one more introduction, and I have on camera. Yeah, you guys, it's fine.
Yeah, hi. So we are from the mixed design fabrication team. So we pitched in with an idea of designing concrete, which is climate specific, also having thermal performance benefits in terms of insulation and thermal mass. Right now in the industry, you see a lot of precast technologies and the monolithic constructions. But our idea was to standardize these with respect to climate. So there are some advanced technologies in the concrete design wherein you use some aggregates and fillers to make the concrete high performance. At the same time, since concrete is a high embodied energy material, so we want to look for alternatives and make it sustainable concrete in the same design. So with this formulation, we want to go with policy with the concrete. Also, we want to work with the concrete companies so that we can pilot this and approach government to implement these ideas.
So is for example, because high performance concrete exists, right? And you can make it way more sustainable than it's being produced right now, like Portland cement and all that kind of stuff, you know. So that is possible. What is the biggest obstacle you see? Is that, for example, to convince or educate concrete producers know that it is possible, or is it regulation, or what is the biggest obstacle or hurdle that you see?
So we feel that in the mixed design, currently either the architects or the developers don't intervene in the mixed design of the concrete. It's usually done in office by concrete technologists or in the lab, before the project starts. But if you can make a generalized formulation with respect to the climate and with the available resources in that particular region, I think that will be very helpful. So initially we might find some resistance because this is new, and then even this practice that we recommend would be new.
Okay. Thanks. That's exciting and super duper important. We've had 3 more teams. Craig, I will hand over back to you. You're mute. You're still mute, babe.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we should have the old exercise thing up on the screen.
Yeah.
I'll now move on. All right. This is a Gary Larson cartoon, and I hope most of you can see it. I'll quickly explain it. It's a joke about a farmer. So it depicts a farmer, an older man. He has what looks like an old gun. He's being interviewed by the news. Behind him is what looks like a giant monster that looks dead. And he's saying to the news people, well, I saw all the commotion and I saw the monster destroying the city. And I said to myself, why doesn't someone just shoot it? And this is a joke about the fact really that there are no single shot solutions that work immediately. Okay, so if you know any completely simple single shot solutions to life's problems that will work immediately, you should email me. At the same time, when there is a problem like COVID-19, or there are problems of inequality, it seems pretty obvious what the government should do. The government should provide a social security network, or the government should make masks compulsory. But this just about never happens. So there are no single shots, and I'm going to explain why this is the case. In one slide and in about 4 minutes, I'm going to explain how the government works. I'm not going to talk about who gets elected and what the history of government is, and I'm not going to talk about how the laws are made. What I'm going to explain is what is in it for them. So we have this abbreviation, what is in it, WIIFT. We also have what is in it for me. So when you're thinking about your customer or the target of your pitch, you are trying to think what is in it for them. What will they get from your pitch? And on the right side of the screen here is a cartoon. And the cartoon depicts some politicians and their lobbyists praying to what looks like a pig with wings. And written on the pig is carbon capture. And what these people are praying to is the idea that the coal industry can keep going, but somehow all that carbon dioxide will be captured and sequestered. And these people here are praying they can do this and that they won't have to change anything. This is a tribe. And a key facet of the government is tribalism. This has been called out quite recently, and it is the reason why a really brilliant idea, so a new invention, say a new drug, takes on average 17 years to go from being a drug that's invented to being part of public policy. About 17 years on average, and that's in health, a very long time. It's a bit quicker in built environment because in built environment, some of our challenges are less risky than new drugs. But I'm going to explain now what the general obstacles are and what the process is that might possibly take 17 years. In a tribe, the group has shared beliefs. The group acts as one. And you can't affect the tribe. You can't enter the tribe, and you can't get these people to change their minds. They are going to keep believing in carbon capture and sequestration. But thinking of it another way, it's also an opportunity. If you can connect to a member of the tribe, in fact, it's too easy to get your ideas in front of the right people. So merely approaching these groups within government doesn't work. The only way in is through a champion. And so I'll introduce the idea of a champion. A champion is someone who knows what you're doing and understands it and can enter the tribal environment. The second thing that's on these people's mind is social or public acceptance. There is no point proposing something to a government opportunity that is not going to be publicly acceptable. A good example of this is that if everybody had their main meal of the day at lunchtime, like they do in some places, but not where I live, then the solar energy available would be used during the day. The problem with this is that it requires everybody to eat dinner at lunchtime. Where I am, this would not be publicly acceptable, and so there's no point even proposing it, not to my governments. Governments are risk averse. They will not take risks. They cannot be seen to be putting people at risk. And an example of this in Australia was a huge government campaign to put insulation in the roof of every house. So every house in Australia would get free insulation. It's a great idea. In a huge program of that size, there are going to be accidents, and there were. And unfortunately, a small number of people were killed. They were tradesmen. It was electricity. But the problem is that this allows the government to be attacked by its opposition, and the project was shut down. So whatever you propose in a pitch, you have to be forward with your risks. You have to have thought about your risks. So that's the opportunity. If they see that you understand risks, they will accept you. Now, this is an interesting one. Everybody in this room knows that there is a relationship between smoking tobacco and cancer. It's been known for a very long time. Every year you smoke over the age of 30, you have a 50% chance of losing a year of your life. The science is fully there. And yet tobacco is legal. So it's not the case that the availability of evidence is going to be adequate for bringing about your change. The advantage is to you that you will not necessarily need to retrieve a huge amount of evidence. It may not be necessary. So in understanding what the target wants, in understanding who receives our pitch and what they want, we must choose the right approach. And everyone automatically assumes that evidence. Finally, and in particular relationship to the ENS, there's no point proposing to government that you want to paint all the roofs white. So if I have a project to paint all the roofs in Calcutta white to reflect heat, and the government has its own program to do solar on roofs, they are not going to want my project. Whatever you do has to fit in with, or at least acknowledge the presence of existing regulations and existing policies. Now, you might want to change a regulation or change a policy. This is a different thing, but you must have done your homework and know what the policy environment is. And finally, and possibly the most interesting one, you will make an entry into government through a champion. This is the most likely way that any small project can have quick impact. And in our previous pitch to policy, we had an expert who is a builder, so he builds houses, and he developed a kind of window awning to keep the sun out of rooms. He made a presentation to local government, so the lowest level of government, and suggested that this would be something that should be advised. There was a champion in the local government who understood this, and she promoted it. It was made into a local regulation, and now it's a state regulation. So it's now the proscribed way, the enforced way to do window awnings in a state of about 10 million people. The key was a connection to a champion. All right, so pitch to policy says policy, and the idea is that you pitch, and then you cause policy to change. And so what is policy? So policy, in my mind, also includes workplace governance. So it includes professional policy within a large employer. So you may try to reach the government, but in fact, you may do better managing up within your own organization. When we say manage up, we mean that even though your organization may be a very great hierarchy and you get told what to do and that's the end of that, in fact, there are conditions where you can reach up. And again, it's about demonstration. It's about demonstrating alternatives and offering choices. Before I mentioned personalities, another important part of approaching a personality is the narrative or the story. So the right connection requires you to have the right narrative. And in pitch to policy, you're going to make the 8 slides, but it's almost more important what you say and what your team members actually voice in the spoken narrative of the presentation. It may also be necessary to connect 2 people together on the right narrative. I'm aware of a project where a webinar was run specifically to connect 2 speakers. The goal was that the 2 speakers should meet. The whole webinar was run just for those 2 speakers to meet. Before, I talked about facts and I talked about policy, evidence. I'm now going to use the word inject. So there is most certainly a time and place for evidence, but it really has to be synthesized and simplified. So I've heard now from a number of your teams, you are all experts in what you do, but the people that you will speak to are beginners. There needs to be a way for you to distill and simplify your narrative and simplify your discoveries, your research discovered facts down to almost nothing. Use a lot less concrete is an example of one way to greatly reduce emissions. It's perhaps too simple for you guys in this room, but it's not too simple for many others in government. Finally, the work of GBPN is actually to write policies. In Indonesia, there's no building codes. They have local regulations, but they don't have national codes. If you are able to write these codes or policies or contribute to nationally agreed mitigation actions, if you have these skills and you make this offering up front, this is how you reach the champions of government. This is how you reach them. and any number of other things, and then we get progress. My next slide is about the theories of change. And in fact, there are very many ways of describing why history has occurred the way it did in the past. And so I'm going to put a list up of 8 of them at once. And I'm not going to slowly grind through the history of change. Instead, I will give you examples of where these things have worked. And in this slide deck in the notes, I've pasted an explanation of each of these theories and each of these examples.
Craig,
Yep.
sorry to interrupt. I just have a question in the previous slide.
Please do.
The 4th point where you mentioned use a lot less concrete. Can you elaborate that?
It's really just an example of greatly reducing all the knowledge that we have and all the facts we have about concrete. If I was in a discussion with somebody about reducing emissions, and they asked me what is one of the highest emission components in the built environment. At the moment, it seems that building with concrete and then using air conditioning in sealed buildings, in thermally sealed buildings, is the stuck building method. And unless somebody does something, it seems likely that many millions of houses that will be built in Indonesia will be built with concrete, sealed building envelope, and mechanical cooling. So getting it right down, if you only have a moment to try and use less concrete, is a way of stating the facts about the impact of concrete. That's all.
Thank you.
All right. So I might quickly skip ahead. How are we doing for time? All right. So these eight things here are examples of 8 theories of change. And I'll work down the list with examples on the right-hand side. And yeah, if you've got any questions, just speak up or grab me in the chat. All right, so one of the main theories for bringing about large-scale change involves giving citizens what they need initially to meet their immediate needs. And then this allows them to gradually accumulate resources and gain a voice. So in this theory of change, we reduce poverty, we improve housing, we improve employment, and then an outcome is that people are enabled by this. So they cease to live day to day and they become able to act. And one example that has helped considerably is microfinance. This is one of the best examples recently of how impoverished people have gained access to loans. Convincing people in power sounds like a great idea that's impossible. Its proper name is called enlightening the elites, but really what it's about is, this is what GBPN has done. We have access, or GBPN had access to the member of a tribe in my home state, and GBPN was able to pitch that after COVID-19, a great way to stimulate the economy is to retrofit homes. And because we got inside the tribe, they gobbled up the idea. And Victoria now has the largest retrofit support system ever. It's the largest state-funded activity in our history. And it was due to reaching the right person. A public movement was something in one of those matrices I showed you before. A public movement, quite hard to get going, but very impactful. This is really it's people in the streets. So we have a public movement called Solar Citizens. It's been started by ordinary homeowners who want to promote solar. It was kicked off by 2 people. It spread quickly because, as you know, solar's kind of very cool here. It's very trendy or whatever. And so the social movement followed the explosion of solar. So starting a public movement. I've already said to you about 4 times in my presentation that setting a great example brings about change. So change is achieved by showing that it can be done. And a small localized success creates belief and provides safety for individuals, institutions, and countries to follow suit. So part of the demonstration is removing the fear that people have. To go back to the example of those zombies in the car, we need to show them that it's safe to cycle, as an example. Never waste a good crisis is a way of saying that during a crisis, there are always new opportunities. And an example of this is that during the COVID pandemic, the importance of indoor air quality has become greatly accelerated. If you tried a year ago with an invention to improve indoor air quality, to do filtration, to make air conditioners filter, it would have gone nowhere. If you have an invention or an idea like that today, now is the time. Okay, so there's a crisis. The crisis provides opportunity. Is there something else about COVID that can help you in your work? Sometimes it's also necessary to actually become a public figure. And I don't mean run for office. I don't mean signing up to be a politician, but I mean taking a public stance in order to promote a certain goal. So Clean Up Australia is a very well-known program to reduce litter. It was started by one guy, Ian Kiernan, and a woman, Kim Mackay, and it has now clocked up 36 million hours of cleaning up and picking up litter. But what's interesting to us is that it has actually stimulated the government to do more itself. It has led to government programs like the community litter grants in the state of West Australia. And it's the case that all governments will follow a large social movement. They have no choice. Changing citizens' beliefs is just a way of saying that change can come through widespread consciousness raising. So I guess you could say that that's education. But it really has to be more targeted than that, and it has to meet people's immediate needs. So for example, if people become aware of their rights, this can profoundly shift how people act to bring about their own dignity. So in this case, values are at the core of social change. And the example I give you here is from the police force. We had a police commissioner, Christine Nixon, head of the state police. There was a problem of alcohol consumption within the police force. And rather than fining people and punishing people and making a structure to remove alcohol, all she really did, at least initially, was say that we just don't drink here. We don't do that here. And she was stating effectively a new belief. Oh, that's my cat. She was stating a new belief. And the new belief is we just don't drink here in the force. And it worked. Finally, this is a counterexample. So obviously you can run for office and you can take part in the political process. And I would encourage you to do this if this is your long plan, your long game. No More Smart Meters is an example of a political party that was created to oppose the federal rollout of smart meters, would you believe? I'm not saying I agree with this. The No More Smart Meters party believed that smart meters were bad for you because of their Wi-Fi signal. And they were successful in creating fear and creating the belief that these smart meters were bad. It didn't work. In the end, we all got smart meters, but they had created a single issue party that had quite a lot of an initial splash and attracted a lot of attention.
Craig, I have a question on the previous slide, if that's all right.
Sure.
It's on the first one, which is about helping citizens meet their needs, and microfinance as an example.
Yep.
There's quite a bit of peer-reviewed research on how microfinance has indeed created an alternate credit delivery system for the poor, which is actually not helping in them being mainstreamed.
Okay.
Into so what is your take on this? I mean, I see that it's pretty comprehensive slide, very useful.
Well, it's a super summary, so you'll have to forgive me crunching so much stuff on here, but microfinance was just a fairly well-known example of what they call the ladder. So change is basically initiated by allowing people to resolve their immediate needs. And then they climb up the ladder and they accumulate resources and they get a voice. And so I know in some microfinance schemes, being able to get any kind of access to money allows people to initiate enterprises. But I'm not saying that it's a cure-all by any means. There are no single shot solutions.
Okay.
All right. And anybody here, very briefly, who's into the theory of change and the work of Donella Meadows, the very famous work in modeling change, just so you know what we're going on about, her model depicts a lever turning or moving a very heavy ball, which is the system. And she has a large body of work describing all the different ways that you can intervene, from attempting to change things that are completely fixed in the system, right up to trying to change the entire goal. So changing the entire goal of the built environment gives you a lot of leverage, but it's a very hard thing to do. Pitch to policy will focus on these two things. So these are how information is used, how information is represented, and then what she describes as reinforcing feedback loops. And you'll learn what that is tomorrow with Angela Rojas, who will explain how to look at the landscape and understand what's stuck. And I'm pleased to offer you this diagram. This is my last diagram. This is GBPN's model of change or theory of change. And what it explains is that GBPN brings about changes in regulations in building codes, which are sticks. So you use a stick to hit somebody when they're bad. And sometimes it is necessary to use sticks to get things moving. This white line here is the rate of change. So in the beginning, it is sometimes necessary to bring in new codes and new regulations. And ENS, of course, is a good example of this. But this is not enough. But the sticks raise the minimum performance of a building. Then what happens is that we support the development of policies that drive demand. So there's no point selling buildings if no one wants to buy them. And these are the carrots. They are the carrots for customers, subsidies, discounts, and also they are the carrots for developers in terms of getting green finance. And then finally, we promote voluntary schemes. So education schemes, awareness raising schemes. And so we call these the tambourines. So these are the noise making, announcement, and education. So there's really the three classes of change that we target in built environment: compulsory, then stimulus, and then voluntary schemes. All right. I'm just checking the time. Okay, so I want to actually move to a deck, an actual deck now. So a pitch to policy deck. It's the deck out of the training. So I've sent around. Yep.
Great, if I may. So would it be, because you're moving up to, let's say, the exercise right now, right? And the breakout room.
I'm going through the deck, and I look at a couple of decks, and then I go to one last breakout.
Yeah. So I was wondering if we could now do a break.
Okay.
A short break, and for people to get some fresh air, a cup of tea, something to eat maybe, okay. And then you set them up for what we expect them to do in the exercise.
Okay, so it's is it 12 minutes past 4?
Yeah, we're in different time zones, and sometimes also in half hours. I would suggest to take, let's say, 12 minutes. At my clock, it says 13. At somebody else's clock, it says 43, I think. That if we take 12 minutes time, so for me, 25, for you, Craig, 25, and for people in India, probably 55, we are back.
Okay.
Is that good? Yeah, 12 minutes, a little bit over 10. Yeah?
I was previously explaining the GBPN's theory of change. And the point is, of all these theories of change, is that you need to pick the one that's going to work for you. You may have more than one, but by and large, your project needs to anticipate change, and there are plenty of theories of change as examples, as I've given. And that slide that had 8, in fact, there are many more, and I've provided a resource in the folder on theories of change, and I'll be putting more things in the folder as we go. All right.
And maybe good to mention, we will also share all of our presentations. Yep. I got a question there. Everything that you see will be shared in the folder too.
Yeah. All righty. So this is from our workbook, and it is a slide from a deck, and it's slide number 4, what we call the background or the theory. And slide number 4, I've included here because I'm going to show you a few slides from the same deck leading up to the change slide. So part of proposing a change is stating what the background is, and that's this. In my pretend deck, I'm selling white paint to make roofs white. So in this case, I'm explaining that using an infrared image on the right, that the car park at the factory is very hot, it's red. The roof of the factory, which has been painted white, is cool. This is part of my background slide. And I might also use this slide to talk about emissivity. It may be good to talk about thermal radiation, and just a couple of other background theoretical elements in the background. And then I say that this is my city, and look at the color of those roofs, right? They're all black and brown. And on a summer day down here, the average roof temperature is about 80 degrees Celsius, okay? This is super hot, and the heat comes into the house. So the situation, which you will learn about tomorrow with Angela, states that there is a supply chain that sells roofing materials. It sells black roof tiles. This leads to hothouses. People love these tiles. They are like the zombies in the car. To them, all the houses only have black roof tiles. Why would you have anything else? And so the problem, the situation as it were, is that the supply chain does not promote thermal coatings. So there are no thermal coatings sold because thermal coatings are different to roofing materials. It just looks like white paint. What good is that? And so there are no cool houses. The change is to show this system as it is, and then how it will be different. The change in my deck in the manual proposes that there be labeling, and there would be a labeling trial, a small one. And all the labeling does is it says that on this roof product, black tiles, the house will be hot. So the roof tiles have a large thermal loading. That's all. And then we apply the same labels to thermal coatings, which show that they have a low thermal loading. This leads to them being purchased. The second part of our change, what we will do tomorrow morning, is begin a campaign, an information campaign to the customers getting their roofs replaced or building new homes so that they know about thermal coatings and will consider them. So this is the change that we're proposing in this example. It's really simple. We don't need a huge explanation of the dynamics of the building industry. We just need to state that these two interventions, labeling, campaign, or information, would bring about thermal coatings. That's our theory. And then the slide that goes after that is called the ask. And this is really the main point of your pitch, is to ask for help or connections. And we are going to ask the government, which I'm calling My City, to help us with a letterbox drop and to subsidize paint, get us some cheap paint. Then the council can claim that it could eventually get international carbon credits. So the what's in it for them, we state that here. They do a letterbox drop for us or a campaign or cheap paint. In return, they can start to look at collecting carbon credits for avoided air conditioner use. We then want the local government to lobby the state government. So this is one thing you can ask the local government to do. You can ask them to lobby the state government. And we will have them lobby the state government to do the labeling I showed you. So it turns out where I live that any product labels are usually a state or national thing. And then if the state does labeling, it will look progressive. So that's the what's in it for the state. So this is this is what we're asking the local government. The government is my target. Local government is my target. Now here's a real pitch to policy change slide. This is not made up. And this is from one of our Indonesian teams. They are going to, they're going to create a carbon credit marketplace. They are going to follow a Japanese model of a bottom-up carbon credit market. And they've got all these steps, and the steps end with the carbon credit market. But the first thing, the thing that they will do on Monday is they will show the value of reducing emissions. So they'll pick something that is a high emitter, and they'll crunch the numbers and demonstrate the carbon credit value. That's what they're going to do on Monday. And then they'll use that with help to demonstrate the benefit of the market. Okay, so Hans, this is the last and not a terribly long breakout, but it's probably the most important one. And what we want teams to do in this breakout whether you're ready or not, is attempt a change slide. And it can be really basic. It can be pencil and paper or PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatever. But it should try and catalog these things that you will do immediately. And the help, or in my case, I showed you that we would do labeling and promotions. Think about the things in your change slide that you can then ask for in your ask slide. Okay, and this is just your first attempt. It's likely that you will change your change slide. That's why we're doing it first. So in this case, I think Hans is going to put you into just the room with your team.
Yeah, I have made for the teams that are present with more people, I've put you in one room, so you stay together with your teammates. Some of you are alone, and to be in a breakout room alone is very alone. So I put you together with other individuals from other teams. So there's a mixture. But if you have multiple teammates here, you have your own breakout room, and the others, then at least you have somebody else, and you can ask some help and chit chat a little bit. Okay.
Don't worry if you noticed in my change slide how I had identified the market, the supply chain, and these other complicated actors. Don't worry if you don't know who those are yet.
Yes.
Okay. The point is to say on the slide where you're going next, in anticipation of asking for help in that step.
Yeah, and it would be really great if you following on what Craig said, just try to propose something, even if you're insecure. If you say, I don't know yet and I need to think about it, then you can also still be thinking next week. That's hard. Try to force yourself to say, okay, let's try this. And then we can work on a specific idea. You don't have to be correct or right. You can change it as we go. It's your proposal anyway. It's always yours. But try to force yourself to make something. It doesn't need to look nice, of course, at this stage. That's not at all important. But just get a statement, a proposal on a slide. If you come back from the breakout room, we'll ask a few of you to share it. It would be great to have a few teams volunteer to show their slide or have the slogan. It's not a story, yeah? If it's not a slide, then it should be a short proposal of what intervention you propose. And it would be lovely to hear from teams that have not had an opportunity to present themselves yet. So, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Hans. Can we go for this?
Yes, of course. Would be lovely.
Sure. Can I share my screen?
Yeah. As far as I don't know. For me, you can. You have permission, or?
I think so.
Yeah. Exactly. Great.
Okay. So this is the idea. We just sort of trying to fill in the sentence that was given to us. So we are going. So first of all, let me introduce our team. Our team's name is Mobius. I'm Shaumik Desai, and I have my partner Apurva Bhate. So I have done my master's in related to building energy performance from CEPT University, and my partner is pursuing urban management related to affordable housing again from CEPT University Ahmedabad. So this is our idea is to install a green wall so that it helps in the carbon sequestration, as well as provides additional thermal resistance onto the building envelope. So based on what the framework was given to us, this is what we have come up with. So we are going to install green wall in affordable housing society in hot dry climate of Ahmedabad, which will demonstrate reduction in cities' carbon footprint and to mitigate urban heat island impact. To the Municipal Commissioner of Ahmedabad, who needs this so as to meet the nationally determined contribution of reducing 33 to 35% of GHG emissions, which is greenhouse gas emissions intensity as per Paris Agreement. So, and this is some graphical we could quickly come up with. So we have a lot of emissions. Solution is to provide green wall, and it will help reduce in absorption of CO2, reduction of acoustic pollution, and increase of the panel efficiency, and so on. And it will help us to be carbon neutral eventually.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's all from our side as of now.
Thank you, Shimmy. You want to go first, Hans, or me?
No, you go.
Okay, so you put up a slide from Orja Energy, and you've stated that you'll do a green wall, and the green wall will demonstrate benefits that will eventually be connected to the COP21 agreement.
Correct.
The thing that you want to change, so that's all 6 steps. You just showed us all 6 steps all the way to the top.
Right.
The most important step is the first step. So are you going to build a green wall on Monday? Perhaps a very small one.
Yes.
And do you need $12,647.80 to build a small green wall? But it would have to be one that's different to what the government has seen before, right?
Correct.
Build it, and you start taking measurements, or
Right.
something like this. This is what the change is. So it may have many steps, but you want to start immediately with some kind of convincing demonstration.
Correct.
Is
Yeah,
that
and there's different things, and there's the intervention, and then on slide 6, and we will talk about that, is what you specifically need, what we call the ask. You ask for this to get it done, and so those things are related to each other.
Yeah.
The thing that comes to mind at me is, and we will talk about this also tomorrow and in the next weekend, is, and Craig showed it in his slides also, what's in it for me? And you position yourself as in the Paris goals.
Correct.
And I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's highly abstract, right? In the sense that, is that specific enough for a politician to identify with? Because we could all say that.
Correct.
Right? With all climate related interventions that, well, today we're all about,
Sure.
everybody could say that my stakeholders, what they will gain is, well, it contributes to the Paris goals.
Right.
But there's a big step, right, between the Paris goals, which are like
Absolutely.
owned by 7 billion people, right?
Right.
And now you need this commissioner to do something, right? And is that enough? So see and try, and we'll talk about that also tomorrow. Try to get inside the skin of the people that you need to make your intervention work. And then not very abstract, but also more tangible for them. And I don't have the answer what that is, but it's a good thinking exercise, I would say.
Sure.
Yeah.
you know, I give you an elephant stamp for using the sentence that I gave you. I'll point out that the sentence can apply at all those scales. So if I want to get India to sign the COP21 agreement and I'm Al Gore, I need to convince Narendra Modi that India will still be able to develop even without fossil fuels. So in this case, we are going to, well, you are going to do a green wall, a new kind, a special kind, something that's pretty new, which will demonstrate carbon dioxide absorption or acoustic absorption to the local commissioner. Let's call him Shripad, and he needs to see this demonstration because he has failed to convince his tribe of the benefits of this. You know this.
Yeah.
And so you do the least work possible as quickly as possible to get this green wall happening, or whatever it is, a model. And so you can now turn around and say, Shripad, we need $6,473.80. Here we go.
Correct. Sure.
All right. Thanks very much, Shumik. Somebody else.
Yeah, we 07GIGI
Yeah.
would like to go.
Yeah, sure. You have a camera too? Can you, if you can, turn it on so we can see you for a moment?
It's kind of not working today.
Okay, fine. Fine. Don't worry.
So can you screen the, see the screen?
Yeah, we see. Yeah.
So this is Govind and Samta from Green Initiatives and Growth Investments. This is for our proposal of change is like we want to start the work with engagement with policymakers.
Tell us a little bit before you start. Tell us a little bit about what it is, what your initiative is about. A little bit of the background.
So yeah, I am a energy efficiency policy professional, and I'm working in this field for last over 10 years now. I have actually I was a lead technical developer for ECBC 2017, and I am also is like a project manager and lead developer for the ANS Part 2. Along with me, it is Samta. She is a MBA in finance and have experience in banking sector. So we have actually proposed this awareness and market transformation plan for fostering energy efficiency in building in India. Policies have been there and it's been the codes are getting developed in the last 2 decades in India, but still it is facing a lot of roadblocks towards the implementation. And two major things that we see as a key roadblocks is first the awareness not in in architects and engineers, not in this group, but at a broader level to the end user who are finally going to use these residential buildings, who are the who going to reside in these buildings. So if they know about it, there will be a demand for it. And then the market transformation plan, it is something to make an economic viable solution for the market players, which is like end users and the builders, to make a building which is affordable and like economically viable. So it needs to be well integrated within the economic activity. If we're going to impose something which is very difficult to, which is very expensive, something it will never, touch the ground. So it needs to be have a correct market sense towards correct business model with it, so that the market transformation plan is economic viable. So in that overall objective, what we need to do is to engage with policymaker and financing institution to develop the correct market transformation plan, and other stakeholder for the awareness like academic institutions and even like media, so that we have a correct awareness strategy. What we need to demonstrate is first the economic viable solution of residential building. The business model should be made in such a way that the adoption of the code and even going beyond the code is something economically viable for them. And then also we also need to develop the demand for it through showcasing the importance and benefit of energy efficiency towards the larger population. The target group will be end user and builder ultimately, and the outcome will be awareness and market transformation plan for fostering energy efficiency in building in India, and facilitate a fast track adoption of ENS code and even beyond it.
Okay.
So
go Hans.
I kind of follow it. If I'm also, if I may, I'm also asking myself, okay, this question. It's next week, Monday. What are you going to do? You're going to demonstrate it. How? If we would meet again 4 months from now, what would have changed if all goes right, if all the lights are green and you can move ahead as planned? What will you have done exactly? And how can I see that? How can I measure that? How can you make it tangible?
Yeah.
You see that? So engage with policymakers, yes, and financing institutes, and demonstrate, yes, but what is the demonstration? A specific, so that, how do you make it tangible? That's what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Craig?
Okay. Thank you for that. I am very aware of course, what the ENS2 program is. I know it's a current project and that ENS1 has been released. And it's great that you've got this idea to make a pitch out of it. In your case, you are the government, and the pitch you want to make is into the market or into the building lobby or into some other element of the greater world to get the government policy deployed and implemented. To me, there's always a way to do this at a small scale. There are people previously, EE buildings and near zero energy buildings have been a luxury good. So these homes that are 10 stars efficiency have been luxury homes. And so one of the marketing challenges for sustainable building is to break the myth that these buildings are only ever expensive. And so the challenge for reaching builders is to show that they can build near zero energy buildings and still make money. And in fact, everybody who's here with you in the room has ideas about how to make the business of ENS compliant buildings financially sustainable in one way or another. So you are going the other way. We need to find the low-hanging fruit in the market who can first be convinced that sustainable homes can be built cheaply. So I know this isn't going to be the government builders because they are used to building with fixed contract costs, but there are other builders out there who are ready to build sustainable buildings and near zero buildings and make them cheap. And so these are the people that you need in your alliance. You need to form an alliance. The alliance is between yourself and those first mover builders who see that they can make money. And this, I think, it's my opinion. I'm happy to discuss it, and maybe you'll make up your own mind. But the first change slide I would propose is that you are attempting to change the perception that sustainable buildings are expensive. And you need help from a small group of builders to show that this is certainly not the case.
Okay.
That's my suggestion.
For these things, of course, you are always the owner of your idea, of course. And the only thing that we can do is make suggestions or ask you questions that make you think, and you decide to change or adopt or not, right? So that is what it is. Looking at time, I was also, and we have 45 minutes left. That maybe we move on to the second module, so at least we have that covered.
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so otherwise we will run out of time too much. So we've had introductions now from today from 8 teams in total. And
9.
so, no, I think 8. We did 2 now, but never mind, you know. So and the rest of you who did not have a turn today, you will have your turn tomorrow, obviously, right? So we get to know your initiatives too. Let me move towards the next topic, and then in 45 minutes, we will wrap this session up. I'll share my screen. we're going to talk about the team and your dream or your big hairy goal. The thing you want to.
We see presenter view, Hans.
Oh, sorry. That is not. I will stop share and then share again. Is it okay now?
Yep. Yes, the
Okay.
template.
Yeah, this is the template. So we'll talk about the team and the dream, your big goal as a team. So what are characteristics of a good team? And I will go rather quickly. What are characteristics of you as an individual? What are your strong points and what are your favorite roles for you to put, and what is something that you don't like to do yourself so very much? I will show an example of that from myself. So you can think about team roles and think about the role that you would fulfill in a team, and if you have any gaps within a team. And why is this important? It's going to be the slide number 8. So we want to talk about you and your big goal and the intervention that you propose today, but it's going to be slide number 8. Yeah, this one. And I would like to invite you to Mentimeter very quickly. I will stop sharing and go to Mentimeter and present. And you can, let me see, I'll share my screen again. And I just invite you, I hope you can see my screen. Can you go to menti.com, fill out this code, and then type in words that in answer to the question. So can you all see it? And if it's difficult for you because your online connection is not very well, just use your suggestions in the chat.
7565.
Menti.com, you see it on top, the code. What are characteristics of successful teams?
Yep, it works for me, Hans, and it says, yep, enter a word is what it says.
Yeah, just enter words.
Any words.
Yeah, your suggestions. It's an open question. Yeah. And if you see a word that you agree with, you can type it too, so it becomes bigger. It will show a word cloud. So for example, if you would say trust, and you agree, you also type trust.
Can I type in 2 words?
Yeah, you can, I think.
Okay, good.
Coordination, okay. And again, words that you agree, here we go. If you agree with words, type them yourselves too, so they become central and they start to come up in the middle. Teamwork, yeah. Nice, thank you, yeah. Complementary, yeah. Interpersonal skills. Okay, coordination. Communication, convergent. Communication is in the middle, yeah. The person who wrote convergent, can you elaborate what you mean with that? I have an idea maybe, but maybe you can explain it a bit in words.
Yeah, I'm Sabu here. I had written convergent. I don't know who else had written. Convergent is when we discuss, we need to make sure that we get to a very useful point, and there either you have divergent discussions or you have convergent discussions. But when you diverge, like I sometimes do divergent discussions, but I always make sure that it converges. Otherwise, it doesn't end up serving anything.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I also wrote about creative dissonance. Sorry.
Let me see. So let's have a look at what we see here. So central is trust, communication, interpersonal skills, teamwork, and then smaller ones are vision or listen or capability, competences, yes, varied expertise, critique, creative dissonance, mutual goals and vision, they relate to each other, I think, and relate with convergence, understanding, transparency, synergy. Okay, so wonderful. We'll have, I will stop sharing. Go back to my presentation. And so I work with teams a lot, and there are many reasons why it's, there are many factors that contribute to successful teams, or in the opposite, so that teams might not work together very well. And in projects or in startup businesses and companies, team factors play a very important role in whether you are successful or not. They rank very high. And now to come up, I just ask you a few things about what you need for successful teams. And the nice thing is, there's a lot of research around this topic, of course, and I'm not necessarily the expert on all this kind of research. But in Google, and what I like about Google, there's a lot of things to dislike, but if you ask me, but what I like in Google, they investigate everything with data and they research everything, and also how to be an effective organization. So teams that work well, they analyze this question too, and you will see a lot of things that you mentioned in the Mentimeter. And this is a way to think about what successful teams look like. And Google, they have, you see the footnote here, they categorized these characteristics in 5 words. There should be psychological safety. So that relates to trust, to the ability to make mistakes and not be burned down. Psychological safety, dependability, you can simply rely on each other. Structure and clarity, so we know what we're working towards, and that relates to things like vision and mutual goals and shared, those kind of things. Meaning in this sense is rather personal. It's not meaning for your project, but meaning for you as an individual in your contribution to the project. And then impact, that is really what the project tries to achieve. I'll go rather quickly because of time, because I want to spend more time to the next thing. This is psychological safety. Okay. These are the most important factors, and you can review that more quickly in your own time. Dependability is this. And leaders should always lead by setting good examples and by being dependable. And you as team member get things done and a good level of quality. Structure and clarity. Team members know what they're supposed to do and they understand the relationships. If I'm not doing my work, Craig cannot move on with his work. So it's not just me not performing for me. No, I really obstruct his work too if I don't deliver. You see how these things relate. So you don't think, it doesn't matter. No, Craig depends on me too. Meaning is this individual thing, what it means for you, why you want to contribute to whatever it is that you propose to do. It's a personal motivation. And that varies per team member because it's highly individual. It's good for you to be aware about this because very often in teams, and I've had large teams too, and when I was younger, maybe I also was not so experienced in doing this in a good way. My communication with my teammates was always about work and about what we tried to do. And it's very normal to do. It's always very functional what we do. You know, when we communicate at work, we're always talking about the work's objectives, the problems, the hurdles that we need to overcome. And that's normal. But if you want to create effective teams and good communication in teams as a leader, you should also be aware of what and why, what individual motivations people have, so you can allow them to accomplish those too. And then impact. It matters what we do. It's important what we do. If we can pull this off, we make a difference. Obviously, all of these things need communication. I'll go to the different. So this is a very short wrap up of good and effective teams. As you're probably, of course, well aware that team members have different strengths. Not everybody is good at everything. And here's a quick exercise that I would still like you to get into, to identify your own strengths. And if your teammates do that too, you have a picture of, okay, in our team, we have these team members. They are good at doing this, but maybe not so good at doing that. We have a gap. We need to find people that can help us and join our team to fill those gaps. Team members have simply different strengths. There's many frameworks to think about team roles. And what we're using today is the Belbin team roles. Belbin identifies 9 roles, and these are the symbols of these roles. A plant, somebody that is creative, comes up with new ideas. A monitor evaluator, a little bit somebody observes and analyzes and say, oh, is this really going right? It's not the first people out of the building, not the first person on stage, but a monitor evaluator. This did not go as planned. What do we need to do? A team worker, somebody that really everybody loves to work with. Is the glue, the social glue in teams. It's not the first person to stand up and raise his or her hand. A specialist doesn't need any explanation. The person who knows everything about a specific subject. You want to know something about that subject, you go to that person. A shaper, and you see the symbol, a whip. Somebody who makes sure the team gets to its goals. A little bit pushy, a little bit dominant sometimes, you know, a little bit directive sometimes. A completer, finisher, somebody who is annoyed if things are not perfect, are not finished, feels like that is kind of sloppy. So you have some people who are really great starters and some people who really make sure it gets done. This is the completer, finisher. An implementer. So, okay, this is our proposal. Now we need to do it. We should not only propose a green wall. Now we should build the green wall. We should get the materials in. We need to do the calculations. We need to find the building. And we need to really talk to the people who own the building. We need to talk to people who can fund this. An implementer. A resource investigator is somebody that sees, oh, okay, what do we all need to get this done, and gets out of the building, grabs the phone, reaches out to people, and a coordinator is something like a manager. What I would like you to do is, I will stop sharing my screen. we're going to do a quick exercise, or so you can profile yourselves. Stop sharing, and in the chat, to everyone, in the chat, click on that link, take 5, 6, 7 minutes to read. Yeah, so we'll stay quiet here in plenary, click on that link, read a little bit more about these 9 Belbin roles. Then we'll go back to Mentimeter, and I will ask you to identify yourself based on those 9 roles. So read those roles and say, yeah, that's me. Oh, that's not me. Yeah? Already start to familiarize yourself a little bit with these words. So for now, click on the link, read for 5, 6, 7 minutes. Because as I promised, I will show you my profile. It's done quite a few years ago. But as you can see, a preferred role that I have is a shaper and a plant and a coordinator. And you see my weaker points are the completer finisher, or the team worker, or the implementer. And that was based on, not on a self-assessment. I really had the full test and I had to answer many, many questions, and then this comes out as a profile. What we do today is we use the free version, so you don't get really a full individual test, but costs money to do an individual assessment. But we can still assess ourselves, and then we will give, I will go now to Menti again, share my screen. And here is a question for you. I'm going to ask you, based on the 9 roles, to do a self-assessment. But if you click submit, your answers are gone, right? So that's why this warning. So you get in the next question, you get the 9 roles, you get 100 points, and you can divide those 100 points across your preferred roles. Yeah, so you can say, I'm 25%, I'm a shaper, I'm 25% a plant, I am not a team worker, 0. So you have 100 points to divide over the 9 roles. Before you press submit, keep a note for yourself. And what we will get as a result is 1 group profile. So not individual profiles, but 1 group profile, but it's still interesting. So again, in Menti, for now, take a few minutes and fill out the question in front of you. 100 points, 100 percentage points that you can divide over 9 roles. And let's see what the group profile is. So this is interesting now that we see 1 profile. It's a self-assessment of all the people in this meeting as a group, but still you can derive some information from it. And I'm rather happy to see this because, oh, it even gets better, right? Because usually in teams like yours, where you're proposing to change something and to bring a change about, you need to be a plant and a resource investigator. A lot of it depends on your, well, on the one hand, creative thinking, and on your ability to reach out and engage with people, to commit them to what you're trying to achieve. So that in itself, like for me, plants and resource investigators are one of some of the most important roles for teams in your situations. And I'm quite happy to see that these turn out to be scoring very high. But all the roles are, it's not completely skewed. It's quite a nice, but that comes because, of course, we have 20 people now contributing. What I said, I hope for yourself that you keep a little bit of track. Okay, these are my characteristics, and I would encourage you to also communicate with your teammate about what did you fill out, right? And do we still have the implementer? Are we strong enough in getting a project really done and executed? So think about these roles within your team, how they are represented, to make sure you have the right team to pull it off. I'm going to stop this share and go back to my slides, because we have little time left. I'm still going to invite you in a 10-minute breakout room. Before we do that, so we've done Menti. Here's a few examples of team slides. And so for now, of course, we don't want you to focus on the photos, but really on what's your dream, and make it tangible. Make it something that we can understand by creating something like numbers and dates. So you make it tangible for yourself. In the change, and that Craig talked about it, is what do you propose to do on Monday? What will you accomplish in the next 6 months and in the next year? And then why do you engage with this at all? What do you want to accomplish on the longer term? And what's your 5-year goal? What is the real big societal change that you want to see? You see a few examples here. I'm not going to read them. They're from various backgrounds. This is an Armenian team. This is a Belgian team. The characteristics are, you know, it's a 5 years out usually. This is an example from a team that we just did the training with in Indonesia. And here it's a really nice, pretty slide, as you can see. What would be nice, if I would encourage you to make it a little bit more tangible by using a number. What would make your team totally happy if you accomplish that in 5 years? Another example, here is the exercise. So I'm going to recreate the breakout rooms and come back in 10 minutes. And focus on the first bullet here. What's your big, hairy goal in 5 years' time? What do you and your teammates want to collectively achieve in that period? I have shared my slides in the chat, so you can download them, and they will also be available in the Google Drive from now on. Breakout rooms. I will open the same rooms. So we're all back. We have a few more minutes. In the chat, I also uploaded the Mentimeter results, and all the things we will share in the chat will also be available in the Google Drive. So I hope you, in the chat, you will download these, the presentation and this overview from Mentimeter. I want to ask one more team. Again, a team that has not had the ability to present. One more team to throw out this 1 minute what you're trying to do and to achieve. Who is a volunteer?
May I go ahead?
Okay, wonderful. Go ahead.
I'll try sharing my screen.
Okay.
All right, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes.
So the project's goal is to implement Eco-Niwas Samhita on ground seamlessly in the residential sector by picking up one portion of it which is heat gain or loss by optimizing the building envelope and moving further from it gradually. The project envisions developments by the end of 2023, that is roughly 3 years, starting with one city and eventually scaling up to similar cities. The team members comprise of Suparna Havelia, that's me. I work in the research and advisory services at Green Tree Global. Then Mr. Anurag Bajpai, he's the director of Green Tree Global. He has worked extensively with the customization and implementation of ECBC in 2007 with USAID projects, and in consecutive years after that with UNDP and Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Then Mr. Raj Verma, who is the electrical consultant at ECBC cell of Uttar Pradesh. He understands the key drivers and challenges of proper ECBC implementation on ground. Then Mr. Pradeep Kumar, who is the advisor and think tank of Green Tree Global. He has had ample amount of experience of working with the ECBC cell of Tamil Nadu and much more experience of working at the city and municipal level in other building projects.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Do you know already which city?
Yes, we want to narrow it down to Uttar Pradesh's Lucknow, because the Lucknow Development Authority signed a memorandum of understanding with the UPNEDA, that is Uttar Pradesh's Renewable Energy Department, and wherein they want to bring in ECBC for commercial and ECBC for the residential sector and work towards implementing it on ground seamlessly, wherein Bureau of Energy Efficiency will provide any and all help that they need.
And just, you don't have to answer now, but can you maybe, when you think about this in terms of 5 years, say like how many houses have been built implementing or adhering to this code, or how much CO2 you would have saved, just to give us some sort, and maybe not now, but some sort of idea what we're talking about, right? Is it 100 houses or 100,000 houses? You know, so what is the, so just a ballparky, I know it's not a PhD, but what is really driving your team forward if you think about this in 5 years' time? Yeah, so maybe that's something that you can, it helps us relate again, and your stakeholders relate to what you're trying to achieve.
Okay.
Craig, any comments? Or?
No, this is a good team description.
Yeah, wonderful.
Suparna, it is, and you got it out in about a minute. So remember that you've got 5 minutes to do your pitch. You've got 8 slides. It may need to be cut back a little bit, and your dream is allowed to be big.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the company's dream. It can be yours, right? So 3 years out, great, but you could say in 5 years, we've done everything. Let's say, okay?
Yes, everything by 2030 maybe, but if we are picking up very small concepts, then I think it would require more an active, more than mandatory, active and voluntary participation from all stakeholders and shareholders in this sector, because so many people remain elusive to the these green building codes. They still think green buildings require a lot of upfront investment and there is no return on investment. We want to make it a very attractive opportunity for people to invest in right away.
Sure. No, I'm completely with you. And the only reason that you have such a big dream here is that in the other slides, you're going to say what you will do tomorrow. But the people who will help you need to see that you are on board for the long game. And
yes, definitely.
The most entertaining way to show them that you are on board for the long game is how big your dream is.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yes. Thank you. I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
All right, people. So we're a little bit over time, so we're going to wrap it up. You can review everything in the slides that we've shared with you here. There's a template. You don't have to use or stick to this template for making a team slide and introducing your team members and the relevant experience. And indeed, we saw a great team already with highly relevant experience, it seemed. You can, it would be great if for tomorrow, oh yeah, this is a takeaway. So very often we focus on what do we do? But this is from one of the management gurus out there. He said, so the most important decisions that you make is not really what you do, but who you work with. You know, the who, the people decisions are sometimes more important than the what decisions. So just a takeaway. For tomorrow, we would like you already when you come in to have 2 slides as far as you can get them done. We understand it's the weekend and you also have families. And so if you can't do it, you can't, but it would be great if you can, right? Work on these slides and build them as we go. Tomorrow, when we start the session, we will start by asking a few other teams to see if you already have slides. Yeah, so this is what we would like you to do as far as you can for tomorrow. Make the change slide and make the team and dream slide. Okay, and I think I will quickly hand over to Craig right now to wrap it up.
All I want to say is thank you very much for starting with us, starting the bootcamp, signing up, sharing your projects, interacting with us and interacting with each other. I think it has gone very smoothly. Tomorrow is a very interesting day. In some ways, it's a bit harder because we look at how complicated the world is. But also it's all there to help you make your project successful. That's its purpose. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you for sticking with us for 4 long hours.
Yes.
Tomorrow will be challenging, but also interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sabo.
Thank you. Thank you all.